I did awful things to ruin my best friend's wedding. Hi, my name is Hulwin, 30 years old. Since forever, I've always been hating third-wheelers, but unexpectedly, I became someone like that. I ruined my best friend's wedding just to win back my love from him. Phelim and I knew each other when we were very little. Because our moms are best friends, I spent my entire childhood with Phelim. Even when we were so young, he already had a special feeling for me. Phelim always listened and agreed to whatever I wanted. I remember the first time I received his love confession was when we were 4 years old, and for the next 15 years, Phelim kept reminding me about it. However, my answers were always no. It's not that I didn't have any special feelings for Phelim, I just thought that it was not big enough to call love. We were better off as friends. Besides, my dream is becoming a journalist, and I wanted to put everything I had into fulfilling that dream. Phelim understood it, so we made a promise together. We would focus on fulfilling our dreams, and at the age of 30, if we were both single, then we would marry each other. 11 years passed, I left my town to go to university and chased my dream of being a journalist. When I was 29, with great effort and determination, I had my own newspaper column, specialized in fashion for a famous publisher. All of my articles were mainly about heavy criticism of the latest designers' collections. Of course, the designers didn't like me much, Mirabel included, a famous wedding dress designer. She always attacked me on social media every time I gave criticisms on her work. But who cares? The readers loved my section, and my career was rising day by day. After reaching the prime of my career, I suddenly remembered about my promise with Phelim. For years, I had several dates, but no one could understand me like Phelim did. Only he could get me and was always willing to go miles to make me happy. I suddenly realized he was the perfect boyfriend for me. When there were about 3 months left until the deadline of our promise, I unexpectedly got a phone call from Phelim. Was he trying to remind me of our old promise? I picked up the call with joy, but my smile quickly faded when Phelim announced that he was about to get married and wanted to invite me to his wedding. What about our promise? Phelim laughed and said that he found his true love. I was too ashamed to say anything more. After that call, I was like a walking dead. I regretted losing Phelim, and that the feelings were soon replaced with anger. I couldn't let some other girl steal him from me, so I planned to prevent this marriage. A few days later, I returned to my town to join in Phelim's wedding. He waited for me at the airport and greeted me with warmth, but our meeting was interrupted by a dressed-up blonde. She seemed angry since Phelim didn't wait for her. While I was still bewildered, Phelim introduced me to Ira, his fiancée. She immediately cheered up and embraced me. As for me, I was not happy at all and only smiled briefly. After the greeting, Phelim drove me back home. Along the way, Ira wouldn't stop talking about her wedding dress or her hair. All Ira cared about was how to appear in the wedding and in the most glamorous state. She even made Phelim wear a weird pink wedding vest, the color that he hates the most, just to match her wedding decorations. So selfish. I don't understand why Phelim chose her. He definitely made a wrong choice, and that made me want to sabotage this wedding even more. Before the ceremony happened, Ira's family planned a small welcome party for the invited guest. Being the groom's best friend, I was invited too. It was a huge and glamorous party. Ira's father is a wealthy businessman, and all of his guests were people with reputations. When I walked by the dressing room, Ira suddenly called me in. She had trouble with her tight long dress, and she couldn't pull the zip from behind her back. Ira wanted me to help. Phelim's fiancé whined non-stop about how she had to go on a diet for a whole day just to fit in that dress. There were a lot of Dad's important guests that day. She was instructed to impress them. Hearing that, I suddenly came up with an idea. I would make Ira embarrassed in front of everyone. I wanted Phelim to see her foolish appearance and change his mind. If not then, at least it would make Ira embarrassed and delay the wedding. After getting dressed, we proceeded together toward the main lobby. Everyone started to join the party. Ira's father wanted her to greet everyone. The tight-fitting long dress was dragged on the floor, which made it hard for Ira to move. When she moved toward the 5-layer cake at the food table, I intentionally stepped on the tail of Ira's dress, which made her fall on the cake. She was covered in cake, and the dress was torn apart. At this moment, Ira looked so miserable. I was a bit regretful and intended to help her up, but remembering my resolve, I stopped. Everyone at the party was horrified. All eyes were on her. The atmosphere seemed frozen. No one dared to move. Surprisingly, Ira burst out laughing and destroyed the awkward moment with a joke. Everyone burst into laughter and helped her up. They considered that incident a funny memory. Ira quickly returned to the dressing room and put on a new dress. Phelim also approached Ira to comfort her. Looking at them being so intimate made me pissed. My plan totally failed and was even backfiring. A few days later, the preparation for the wedding still went on. Ira and Phelim were always side by side. I thought accepting to be the bridesmaid for Phelim's fiancé would give me a chance to split them. But in the end, I had to see them being lovey-dovey every day. 2 days before the wedding occurred, Ira led me and 2 other bridesmaids into her room to brag about her wedding dress. I have to be honest, it was such a glamorous dress and was definitely something to be proud of. With classic ball gown style, I certainly believe that any girl would die to try on that dress. Ira told us that was the wedding dress that her mom wore in her own wedding. Before she passed away due to cancer 3 years ago, Ira promised her mom that she would wear it on her wedding day. That's how she would honor her mom's wish and let her mom be invited to the wedding too. Ira declared that she would even be willing to call off the wedding if she couldn't wear that dress. While all the other bridesmaids were gathering around the dress and praised it excitedly, I stood there in silence and came up with a scheme to cancel the wedding. Ira's story gave me a clue. Right on that night, I snuck into her dressing room and cut the dress into pieces. The wedding would definitely be canceled. And just like I expected, the next morning, Ira's family turned into chaos when they found out that the bride's dress was ruined. Ira held the dress and cried uncontrollably. Phelim tried to comfort her and wanted to quickly find another set of dress to replace it to proceed with the wedding, but Ira insisted on rejecting his idea. She was determined to wear her mother's wedding dress on her wedding day. Both started to argue. Ira screamed that her fiancé didn't understand her. She got mad and left the house right before the wedding, leaving Phelim alone in frustration. Normally, I should feel glad knowing that my plan worked. But deep inside, I felt torment. For the first time, I saw Phelim broke down. When I tried to comfort him, Phelim didn't even care. He only talked about Ira. I told him that Ira was not elegant, not only that her characteristic was extremely childish and annoying. She wasn't compatible with him at all. Phelim laughed. Obviously, he knew it all. Ira might not be perfect, but she's a person with a kind and warm heart. Phelim loves his fiancée and accepts all of her flaws. He always wants to see Ira being joyful and happy. Phelim's words made me realize how foolish I was trying to split them. Phelim had already moved on from me a long time ago and deeply fell in love with Ira. I was the biggest selfish here. Like what he said, love was not about possessing the person you loved, but it was about wanting that person nothing but happiness. Phelim and Ira deserved to be together. To redeem my mistakes, I did something that I would rather burn in hell instead of doing. I asked Mirabelle for help. The famous wedding dress designer who always spit venom on me on social media every time I gave criticisms to her work. Even though I wanted to avoid her at all cost, I had to admit that Mirabelle was the best wedding dress designer I knew. Designing dresses and fixing them are her talent, though knowing that the possibility that she would agree to help me was slim since we hated each other, I still wanted to try my luck. And how surprising, Mirabelle agreed. However, on one condition. She wanted me to give up my fashion column and write an official apology post to her on social media. This would destroy all the hard work that I had for years, but my first priority then was to save Phelim's marriage, so I agreed with her. Quickly after that, Mirabelle arrived at my home. She brought her tools and started to fix the dress. As for me, I looked for Ira and confessed all the bad things that I did. At first, Ira was very pissed, but facing my desperate pleading and Phelim's dire state, she went back. With her talents, Mirabelle finished fixing the dress in one day and let Ira wear it in the wedding ceremony. When the wedding occurred, I didn't dare to appear in front of them, but stood from far away and observed. I smiled happily, seeing that my best friend was happy next to the one he loves. I whispered my celebration to them and wished them all the best. After that day, I did what I promised to Mirabelle and quit my current job, but I didn't feel very sad about it. I believed that with my capabilities, I could start everything all over again. And the more important thing is that I feel peaceful within my soul.